Can the Golden State Warriors run it back one more time with Curry, Draymond Green, and Jimmy Butler and expect to compete for a championship? In my opinion, not without some deep changes on this roster. And for starters, it starts with Jonathan Kuminga. This guy is going to be a restricted free agent and showed a ton of potential in the last round of the playoffs versus the Timberwolves. He did an excellent job coming off the bench, providing a spark and scoring the basketball at almost an elite level for the Warriors. Now, I do think letting him go this offseason and going to another team is the right decision to make, but he's a restricted free agent. So you need to get some kind of compensation in a sign and trade if you're the Warriors, because you've got to make a move for another guy. And to me, that other guy is a center. The Warriors need a center. Draymond Green, and Steve Kerr said this in his postseason press conference, Draymond Green cannot be the center anymore. It's putting way too much on his body. It's asking him to do way too much at age 36, and to expect him to compete at an elite level at that position is a mistake. And I completely agree. The same thing can be said of Curry and Jimmy Butler. To ask these guys to, one, be healthy for all season, and two, make a deep playoff run with the team on their backs like it was this last season, is setting yourself up for failure. To me, Curry obviously had a freak injury with his hamstring, but that can definitely be a contributing factor to why he got injured. So you have to take the load off this team, and the first thing that you do is go get a center. Who that is, I'm not necessarily sure. I do think the second thing the Warriors need to do is add depth in their shooting. The Warriors have always been elite during the Curry era at shooting the basketball, but Buddy Hield and Stephen Curry, to me, is not going to cut it anymore. You need to stretch the floor continuously, especially if you're going to play Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler at the same time on the floor. The Warriors need another elite shooting performance. I think that's with shooting guard Malik Beasley from the Detroit Pistons. He finished second in the NBA in three-point makes this past season, and I do think he's got a little more juice in the tank. Going to get that guy is going to be unbelievably crucial for what the Warriors want to do next season. There's got to be a spark off the bench. There's got to be depth with this Warriors roster. There's got to be a get-a-bucket guy coming off the bench now that Kuminga is leaving. To me, that's Malik Beasley. He does an unbelievable job at stretching the floor. He was cranking threes last season for the Pistons, and to ask him to do that again in Golden State is exactly the perfect fit. Not to mention, he's not a bad defender, and the Warriors can always use more defense. I think looking at this playoff series versus the Timberwolves and expecting guys like Quentin Post and Moses Moody to step up and perform at a high level is just an unfair ask overall. But to replace those guys with a Malik Beasley, that turns the Warriors into a deeper roster, in my opinion. Now, the next thing that they need to do is go out and get more depth for the regular season. Young players. The old guys can no longer carry this team, in my opinion. Curry took a dip in his scoring this past year. Now, he did turn it up for the playoffs and performed well. So did Jimmy Butler, except for the last couple of games. But overall, both of those guys did a great job in the playoffs. But it seemed that they ran out of gas at the end of the year because they had to try so hard towards the end of the regular season to get the Warriors into the playoffs. You can't do that again because you're going to have the same result. And to me, the definition of his insanity is obviously doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That cannot be the Warriors' strategy going into this next year. They're going to have to find an answer. Podziemski, to me, is not the answer. A center, young players, in depth, that's what's best for this Warriors team. Now, how does that happen? And that's a great question because the Warriors are at $170 million already on the salary cap for next season, and they haven't signed a single free agent. Now, you could trade some guys, but the main parts of these contracts have to do with Stephen Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. I don't think you can get rid of that core, so you're going to have to get creative and get really good assets for Kuminga and go get you a Jordan Poole or maybe even an Andrew Bogut type player. A lot of people forget the early part of this Warriors dynasty was really centered around Andrew Bogut and Stephen Curry's pick and roll on the offensive end. That opened up a ton of threes for the Warriors, especially for a guy like Klay Thompson. Going to get another pick and roll dominant player, maybe even a guy who could do a pick and pop like Miles Turner that's coming into free agency this year. That could be key for the Warriors. So overall, can the Warriors make another run at a championship? Absolutely, but it's going to come at the cost of getting aggressive in the offseason, similar to what they did at the trade deadline, and going to get another piece that adds depth, shooting, and size to the team. That's a rarity. One guy that I'm also looking at, Kristaps Porzingis. But overall, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.